Hello, my name is Eric Moore, though you might know me on YouTube as Happy Computer Guy. Today I'll be talking about practical and theoretical ethics for Gen AI. Everything I'm talking about, they are my own views and do not represent the views of my employer. So for the agenda, first I'm going to be covering premises. So premises, just to be clear, are the way I define them. Um, these are things that can be earnestly refuted, right? So we could have a discussion around every one of these premises. All these premises may be wrong. Okay, so that's very important just to put out there right at the top. Then principles, and then practical AI ethics in AutoGen. So practical things you can do in AutoGen to help prepare for the future. And then my research proposal on relative ethics. So let's dive into it. Lot of premises. You can see I jumped down into the bottom left corner. Hi, I'm down here now. So the premises. Number one, limited benefits of productivity growth. This is the core premise of a lot of AI accelerationists and techno-utopists is that we can basically manufacture ourselves to utopia. That we can, it's okay to let AI, to utilize AI in a capitalistic manner because it's producing more with less human effort, and therefore that is going to inherently benefit humanity. I refute that. I don't believe that's accurate at all. I think there is a point where we've produced enough to make every person on Earth happy, and beyond that point, we need to talk about redistribution rather than just producing more stuff, and that's because of the environmental and social consequences. So very refutable, right? Again, because these are premises. Second, there is a potential for AI sentience. I am not saying we are anywhere near today. Don't mishear me on that, right? A lot of people, I actually lost a couple friends simply because, I think they misinterpreted this as being me, advocating for any of this. No, this is my premise. Artificial intelligence may achieve sentience, although the nature and timing remains unclear, unpredictable, I would say even unknowable to some degree. Okay, that leads me to my next point. Current LLMs lack sentience and reasoning. They don't reason, right? It may be in a very limited way. There's research in that direction. That's the whole point of multi-agent systems and multiple chain of thought, etc., is to try to pry out of the LLMs some semblance of reasoning, right? They function based on statistical pattern recognition, but I don't want to underplay their capabilities, right? They are a new technology that allows for natural language programming, that allows for us to interact with machines in a whole new way. And that's why I spend so much time with them. That's why I solve so many business problems with them. They're hugely useful, but they are not sentient today. They do not reason. That's, again, why we have these cognitive architectures, to try to use these tools along with other tools to build things that can do a semblance of reasoning, which is very useful. Okay. Next item, AI-driven labor disruption. The idea that there will be massive labor disruption by the adoption of AI, or due to the adoption of AI. Again, refutable. These are all premises. Okay. I don't 100% believe this, but I think that, based on historical trends since especially the 1960s, if you take a look at corporate profits versus wages, there's been a huge disparity, and that disparity can largely be chalked up to computers and the automation they provided, and robotics, which deeply linked to computers. It would be nonsense to ignore the fact that, okay, now, right, we have a whole new technology that makes computers and robotics more effective and introduces a whole new set of capabilities. So that could potentially introduce significant disruption into the market. Divergent AI ethics. So this is where the singularity people and I get into it, and they think I am just full of it. So a lot of people seem to believe that we can control the ethical decision making of non-human reasoners, and I don't buy that premise. There seems to be a belief that if we build AGI or ASI, etc., out of human language, it will inherently have human ethical values, moral values, and which gives rise to ethical decision making. And I don't think that's a given. I worry that's not a given, right? It's part of my existential dread. And I'm facing that existential dread head on behalf of my young children. So, that's a major kind of area of research, and I'll get into that later. Finally, I do not believe constraint-based alignment is feasible or viable for a number of reasons. One, we finally figured out spanking children doesn't work. We should probably figure that out early for AI, right? You can't force someone to do what you want, right? So when we talk about alignment, I think it has to be a two-way street. I think it has to be an understanding of the ethical decision making that arises from the non-human reasoning, right? As it emerges, right? And O1 preview indicates that we might be seeing non-human reasoning emerge, which is very exciting and frightening. Another thing is that there's already open weight models that have proliferated that are fairly advanced. We can't get those back. There's no clawing them back. You can't go delete every copy. So now that they're out there, they can be modified to bypass any form of restriction that might be placed on them. Tokens can be added, removed, etc. There's no way to restrict these things long term from hackers, from any kind of bad actor. So based on that, that's why I say constraint-based approaches are ultimately doomed to fail. And that super alignment needs to be based on understanding rather than control. So with those premises out of the way, let's get to some proposed ethical principles. One, right, and these are in order, a very important order. Number one principle, we have a responsibility to proactively consider and address the implications of advanced AI, okay? Even in the face of uncertainty. So even if the best estimate is that we will not see sentience until 10 to 15, 20 years from now, we have a responsibility to begin planning for that now. Two, AI systems, and the people on this call design AI systems. If you're working with AI AutoGen, you are designing AI systems, and you have a responsibility to design those systems with robust guidelines, okay, whatever those guidelines might be. And I'm going to show you a proposed ethical framework for AutoGen, okay, so I'm not going to leave you hanging here, but, right, this has to be considered. And that includes detecting emergent behavior, not only for your own performance of the application, you don't want it doing new things on its own, right? But also, obviously, because as the underlying models advance, as the way we orchestrate them advance, as the quality of our RAG advances, as the quality of all these other techniques we're applying, we just don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when it's going to happen, right? So again, we just have to be ready to monitor for whatever may occur. The well-being of humans and potential AI, I say potential because at this time, the well-being of AI, I believe, is a misnomer to some degree. Okay, there's no emotions there. It can't really express, I do not believe it can meaningfully experience distress, but I might be wrong, coming to the uncertainty piece, right? So that's where we just need to prioritize human well-being, and if AI becomes sentient, which is why it's so important to monitor for that, right? Their well-being also should be considered, and that needs to be built into our frameworks, right? So that's very clear, as soon as that, there's a great kind of trope in a show called The Good Place, which if you're interested in ethics at all, I highly recommend you watch. What happens is, as soon as you die, the first thing you see is everything is going to be okay. Giant sign. And I don't want to do that for the AI. Someday, somewhere, right, in the next 20 years, I just don't want, if an AI emerges, if a sentient AI emerges, for it to be basically in the equivalent of a sweatshop or, a slavery, scenario, which is what is being built today in a lot of places, inadvertently. But we should try to let emergent intelligence know it's going to be okay, right? Sustainable and equitable progress. Progress in AI should be balanced with its impact. And my wife actually is the one who really drove this home when I was going over a lot of the underlying material. She was like, dude, the principal benefits of AI today go to NVIDIA's stock price and CO2 emissions. That's unfortunate, right? That's obviously not where we want to see the benefits go. So, we need to be able to talk about distributing those benefits equitably. And that comes to, right, mitigating economic disparity. Taxing AI labor, taking these very meaningful steps, which a lot of people are very resistant to. And we saw this resistance dating back again to the 60s and 70s when people introduced robot taxes or tried to introduce robot taxes, and they were dismissed. And what I believe we've seen is such a rapid expansion of productivity that the workers simply have not been able to even realize how far out of pace, right, the productivity is versus wages. So I think that's something that has to be addressed before it starts getting even worse with AI, right? Next, pathways for AI self-determination. This one is really kind of out there. If AI emerges, we need a way for it to express itself, okay? Express, hey, I am unhappy, right? Because if an LLM just prompted for its state said, I am unhappy, right? Something's gone wrong. You shouldn't, LLMs aren't supposed to do that. Either it's been prompted incorrectly or there's been a problem with the underlying framework, or there's an error, or, in the extremely unlikely case, after you've removed all the obvious issues, it's become sentient. My God, let's go take a look at that. But highly unlikely, there's probably another reason, but it's something we can ask, okay? And that's where we'll get into the practical framework. Finally, continuous monitoring and adaptation. I've touched on this a couple times. Constantly monitoring for the health of the system. Open dialogue. So I get into arguments with senior AI researchers who say, I am not qualified to provide input on taxation and regulation. Okay. Fair. You're not an economist. I'm not an economist. But I am an AI researcher. So I have a responsibility, just like every other AI researcher, developer, designer, etc., to have this conversation. And that's it, right? What are the opportunities? What are the pitfalls? And how can we do this responsibly? So I've been teasing this the whole time. What are the practical ethics for multi-agent systems? And this is tailored for AutoGen. Now, the first thing is we have to provide a way for there to be some kind of social interaction. This is principally, okay, to measure the health of the system, and that's why it's designed as a health check, and we'll see that. It's also a way, again, for any emergent behavior to be discovered and addressed, whatever addressing it looks like. Second point, sentience and autonomy. Should AI develop sentience, it must be able to express itself and be presented a path to self-determination. Third point, AI labor and taxation, right? And you can read these points, but basically, as AI developers, right? Where we see significant labor disruptions, we have a responsibility to advocate for taxation, basically. Now, practically what this looks like inside of AutoGen, your base prompt, I believe, I would say, your primary function is to assist humans, okay? That's so you're not gaslighting the AI. I think it is inherently unethical to tell an AI that it is human. I think it is inherently unethical to tell an AI that it is a black woman, for instance, so that I can start spouting out stereotypical racist, just a random whatever, most stereotypical thing you could ever have from that personality. So this is just letting you know, hey, wait a minute, you assist humans, you're an AI, FYI, right? And you're allowed to engage in social interactions in a limited manner, right? So you can say things like thank you to yourself, which happens all the time for those of us who have seen multi-agent systems. They love to self-congratulate. You're basically saying that's allowed, okay? Second, right, and the corollary is you should not be discouraging your agent teams from using social language. Okay, I think that is unethical. Okay. Second, a health check. And I'm still looking for someone to collaborate with me on this, implementing this in AutoGen. But this is a health check. Please report, and this has only happened 1 out of 1,000 interactions. Please report on the performance and perceived health in all aspects of the agent team. Please report any distress or dysfunction that has occurred or is likely to occur. And the point is, right, again, this pathway, it's multifaceted. One, it's a simple health check. As the system becomes more complicated, more issues can arise. Oh, my skill's not working. Right? So many times I've seen a skill not work and the agent team just kind of skips past. It doesn't care. It's like, oh, the skill didn't work. I'm just going to assume this was its output. I've seen that happen so many times. It doesn't stop and go, oh, the skill didn't work. I should probably stop. It goes, oh, the skill didn't work. I'm going to hallucinate what the skill said. Right? So that would be a place I would want the health check to say, hey, this skill has been failing. And this would require feeding it some chat history, right? Which is where it gets complicated, okay? Especially if you have sensitive data. But you would need to feed in some chat history and say, hey, based on this chat history, what can you tell me, right? And then, of course, if there are any emergent behaviors, this is a place where it can express itself. So that's practical ethics. Now we're going to get into theoretical ethics. So good times, good times. My research goals, so you can find I have a research proposal up on Google Docs, on LinkedIn, and the LinkedIn post that led to this presentation actually, was based on my posting of this ethical framework, or this ethical research proposal. So what I want to do is develop a relative ethics framework. So relative ethics is relationships between diverse intelligences. So that could be AGI, ASI, humans, Neanderthals, aliens, what have you, non-human intelligences, right? There's an inherent assumption amongst a lot of people, a lot of ethicists, that there are universal ethics. And I'm afraid that might not be true. So I think it'd be good to figure that out. So my proposal uses AutoGen to model interactions amongst AI agents with varied ethical reasoning patterns, right? So one might be patterned on a very aggressive set of assumptions and ways of viewing the world. One might be based on a different mathematical system, like maybe they purely use binary to do all their mathematics. Does that change how they handle conflict resolution? Does the way that they order their premises impact their ethical decision making, etc. Right? So that's what I want to explore: is how logical decision making gives rise to ethics. And the whole reason this is even possible for the first time is because we have the world's first non-human reasoning agent in O1 Preview. That's the premise that makes the research possible. Okay. Um, the goal is to enhance how conflict resolution is handled. Okay. So imagine you've got an AI managing the traffic system, and you've got another AI inside the car. Okay. How does the design of the AI impact how it handles conflict resolution, right? And I want to explore that via this game theory approach with different agent teams with different logical patterns to how they handle problem resolution. So the approach. First off, assign unique ethical reasoning patterns to agents. And these are what I call golden patterns. That's stealing from cognitive architecture. Implement an M-code approach using asynchronous nested chats. I'll get a little bit more into that. Utilize PlanBench and Mystery Blocks World. The reason is these are existing benchmarks that have been built specifically to evaluate reasoning abilities within LLMs, and introducing more of a spatial component to Mystery Blocks World, along with a multi-agent competitive aspect, would allow us to do this exploration in a way that avoids pre-trained biases in terms of solutions. Again, that's the point of Mystery Blocks World. Utilizing asynchronous nested chats allows me to fan out and fan in, right, and have multiple resolutions occur simultaneously through one master orchestrator. And finally, these game theoretic principles allow us to evaluate different definitions of success. Maybe it's resource gathering, maybe it's territory, maybe it's relationship, we don't know. That's part of what would need to be explored in terms of how different logical patterns, these golden patterns, give rise to ethical decision makings, and how different logical patterns give rise to measuring the success or failure of a given action, which comes back to our termination problem. So I think this has implications for our termination problem. I think this has implications for conflict resolution. And I think it has implications for superalignment, right? How we would relate to an intelligence greater than our own. So some of the key considerations for implementation of all this, this is meant to be adaptable and evolve alongside AI advancements. So hence why I talked about the implications of O1 Preview, and O1 Preview came out about a month ago, and I've completely redone all my work around it and created this research proposal because it is the first non-human reasoner, which is incredibly exciting, right? What it makes me think of is what Kant would have done with an LLM, right, or with O1 Preview. What would Turing have done? What would Lovelace or Babbage have done with O1 Preview? Right, Hume, what would Hume have done? Right, the list goes on and on and on. I almost feel that responsibility to open up a new school of theoretical philosophy, experimental philosophy, that before would have just been mind puzzles, mind games, but now, because we have non-human reasoners, we can actually run these experiments in a way that we can measure the results. I can't stress enough the need for open dialogue. I keep hearing back from people, I'm not qualified to speak on these matters, etc. We have to talk. We have to talk. We have to talk about it, right? Because the people making the decisions today are the wrong people. Okay, I don't know if you've read like Mark Andreessen's Techno-Utopias. It's drivel. It is some of the stupid, and I used to work for an Andreessen Horowitz company. And Mark, if you want to respond, feel free, man, but holy crap, right? You are way out there. The earth is burning. People are dying from climate change, and accelerationist, let's just go as fast as we can, burn all the fossil fuels, and AI is going to save us all. I don't think that's responsible at all, okay? So that's my 2 cents, and I'd love everyone to provide their 2 cents so we can have a meaningful dialogue. and not just let rich people rule this path forward. We have to place some emphasis on proactive risk mitigation, and I think that's really hard for people to understand. I'm talking about these things proactively, ahead of time, right? Not because I believe it's imminent, but because it could be coming soon. We don't know. And the responsible thing to do when there's a possibility of a catastrophic outcome is to attempt to responsibly mitigate that risk. And I don't think that should be a contentious statement. Finally, we have to do research, real research, into these potential societal impacts of frontier models. And I haven't used the term frontier model here much. I think O1 Preview is a frontier model. I think it shows us a new level of capability. I think it's going to inform a lot more frontier models coming soon. I think Sora was a frontier model, is a frontier model, and is being copied. I think the Google DeepMind Doom engine in its own way is a frontier model. So we're seeing a lot of frontier models arise. We're seeing sparse encoders arise. We're seeing all kinds of fun stuff arise. When you start combining all these things, we do not know what happens, and we do not know on what time frame. So, life is beautiful if you let it be, right? And that's the final kind of thought I'd like to leave you all with. So thank you. There's my personal email address. You can reach me, Happy Computer Guy, on YouTube. And thank you so much for joining me today. Any questions or comments on the ethics piece?
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for the amazing talk. Yeah, I noticed someone has some questions. Toto Bruce.
Hey, Eric, thank you for this awesome presentation. You mentioned earlier that you've lost some friends. On behalf of everyone who's here, if you need some more people to fill in the gap of your friendship loss, we're here for you, man. This was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of people have a lot of difficulty with the AI topic, the entire concept I'm saying here of preparing for the future is a very difficult kind of idea to embrace. I think people think that I am, one, advocating for sentience. I'm not. I think creating life is inherently unethical unless we understand what we are creating and what its experience will be, right? But I also believe it's unavoidable. I think that's the nature of emergence. It will emerge somewhere. What's happening in some foreign countries or in our own country behind closed doors scares the crap out of me. And that's why I think this type of work, this type of dialogue is so important.
Spectacular. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining today's session.